What's going on, guys, and welcome to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review from February 10th, 2023. I am Graham Jesus Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend so far. I was at the SmackDown Live last night at Mohegan Sun here in Connecticut. Had a great time, decent show overall. Really nothing overly exciting outside of the Bloodline stuff, which continues to carry the blue brand each and every single week. I do fear for the future of this show, beyond this storyline being over. Once it seemingly, presumably wraps up at WrestleMania, and that's not to say the Bloodline, the entire angle will be over, but probably the peak of it, the peak of this program with Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns and the Usos and whatnot, Paul Heyman, once it likely peaks, probably peaks at WrestleMania. I do not know what SmackDown looks like after that. You know, saving for a draft or whatever it might be, which, why the fuck would you even do a draft at this point if they don't even really take the brand split seriously? Unless they reset the rosters and really start to take the brand split seriously again, there's no point in doing a draft. But let's say they do. They really have to start putting a lot more stock and effort into getting a lot of these people over. There's a lot of people on SmackDown I like. There's a lot of talented performers on this show. Some of which I don't give a fuck about, like Lacey Evans at this point, who gives a shit. I really don't give a fuck about Madcap Moss, I'm sorry. I like Karrion Kross. I like Santos. I like people like Tegan Knox. And, I think Raquel has a lot of potential. A lot of these people, I can tell you firsthand from being at the show last night, a lot of fans, hardcore, casual, whatever it might be, and a lot of the people that attend these TV tapings, aside from pay-per-views for the most part, are casual fans. We can say whatever we want about, Braun Strowman, he sucks, or no one gives a shit about him. He gets consistently one of the loudest reactions of anyone at these fucking shows. So, people really haven't complained about Braun lately, but, the match with him on this show was the best part of the entire show, really. But Braun himself, I will continue to say it at every SmackDown I've been to since he's been back, and I've been to at least 3. Believe it or not, I went to one here in Connecticut back in November. I was in one at Providence in November as well the following week, and I was there last night. Braun gets some pretty strong reactions. So, Braun Strowman's not the problem. People like Karrion Kross, people like Madcap Moss, people like Santos, people like the Viking Raiders, those guys just aren't over. Some of these people, WWE is putting effort into getting over and reestablishing. Lacey Evans being one of them, which, again, I don't know why the fuck would you even bother wasting time on her. She's really not overly exceptional anyway. You can say she's the Baron Corbin of the women's division. That is accurate. But I actually really like Baron because I think he can go with the right opponent. Not that Lacey Evans can't, but she hasn't done anything interesting in years. Corbin, I think, at least has potential. He's been there for fucking 7 years on the main roster. But Corbin, to me, in the right role, can be entertaining. Lacey Evans, to me, is just damaged goods. You could say the same thing about Baron. I completely get it. I don't want to completely, do double standards here. Lacey just does nothing for me at this point. But my point still stands. SmackDown needs help beyond the Bloodline stuff. They got some really good teams. Gunther's an example of a guy that's gotten over. LA Knight's an example of a guy that has gotten over. Gunther was not on the show in front of the audience. I guess he was in the skybox, which we did not see, because in Mohegan Sun, it's a relatively small arena. I don't know how many people it fits. Probably 5,000 maybe, I'm not sure. It's not a lot of people. But it was a complete sellout last night. From what I understand, from what I've been told, it was a sellout last night, and it certainly looked like it too. Looking around the arena, aside from the seats behind the fucking WrestleMania sign, which there were some people sitting behind the sign, which was kind of funny. I don't know how the fuck they could see. It was a complete sellout last night. So, I don't even know what my original point was, but, they packed the stadium, the crowd was hot for most of the show. Oh, and Gunther, that's who I was talking about. We didn't see him on the show, because again, I guess he was in a skybox apparently. I didn't see that from where I was sitting personally, but he wasn't on the show. LA Knight was, and he came out, it wasn't on the show, he was in a backstage segment on the actual show. He was in a dark match after the show was over. Competed against Bray Wyatt in a no disqualification match, which was light years better than their lights out match, which honestly isn't saying much. I know the bar is very low, but he got a good reaction. He got great heat. So they're doing well with LA Knight. They're doing well with Gunther. But for every 2 people that are over, there's a lot of other people on the show that are not over. Hit Row, Viking Raiders, Legato, Karrion, Lacey, Tegan, and a lot of those people I do like and feel have potential. They just haven't been booked properly, or they just brought up and brought back so many people at the same time that a lot of whom aren't over. It's really the AEW issue. Not that the difference with AEW is that they brought in so many people at one time. A lot of those people just have nothing to do, but at least most of them are over. A lot of the people in WWE right now do not feel remotely as over as they probably should. But anyway, on the whole, though, I did think this was a decent show. Opened well at the Paul Heyman Sami Zayn segment. The four-way at the end was good. The tag team title match in the middle was the best part. And the continued threads with the Usos and Paul Heyman and Sami Zayn, again, were really what carried the show. So let's start from the beginning here. We did open the show, as mentioned, with Paul Heyman in the ring, with both the WWE and Universal Championships around his shoulders. No Roman Reigns in the show tonight, or last night rather. Sami Zayn soon interrupted. Paul said that Sami wasn't on the show, and then everyone went nuts when Sami showed up in the same way he showed up last week with a black hoodie over his head. He confronted Paul, didn't attack Paul, but basically told Paul Heyman, the cracks are showing within the foundation of the Bloodline. The Usos are kind of teasing tension right now. Solo Sikoa has been showing more of a mind of his own by aligning with Sami before Roman really pulled him in tight. What does that mean for your future, Paul, in the Bloodline? What does that mean for Paul Heyman? And Paul Heyman also mentioned the WWE, the undisputed WWE Universal Championship, is the island of relevancy. Without that championship, there is no Roman Reigns. That is literally what Paul Heyman said. So I don't know if that indicates, Roman Reigns is going away after he loses the championships, but I mean, I think that should be the case anyway, personally. If and when, hopefully, he loses the titles at WrestleMania as the undisputed champion, none of this split title bullshit. Split the titles after Mania. Split the titles after Cody Rhodes or whoever, hopefully Cody, beats Roman for those belts. After that, I would take Roman off the show until at least SummerSlam. Maybe Money in the Bank. I know that's going to be a big show in London, but at least SummerSlam, in my opinion. Give him a couple months off. Bring him back for that show. If not later than that, because Roman, I know he's a part-timer now, but he has been the champion for so long. Some time away from Roman Reigns on TV would be a nice, refreshing change of pace for a little while. But I thought this was good stuff. The first match on the show saw Drew McIntyre and Sheamus Rip Banger Bros beat Hit Row in what was basically a squash. This match was over within mere minutes. Hit Row, during the commercial break, attempted to get some good heat, Top Dollar that is, on the mic, and him, Ashanti, B-Fab, all taking turns trashing the crowd. Like I've always said, I like Hit Row, but this clearly just hasn't worked, will not work, is not working. They came out to really little to no reaction. I thought having them get heat during the commercial break was smart, but very few people cared. And then not only did they attempt to get some heat during the commercial break, it ended up mattering fucking diddly squat, because when they came back from commercial and did the match, they got squashed within minutes. This was not competitive at all. So if it wasn't already official, Hit Row feel completely buried right now, beyond buried. And I don't use that word lightly, but Hit Row has been just a complete fucking failure since coming back to WWE. I think it's official now. I mean, they were beaten. I know it was McIntyre and Sheamus who are miles ahead of these two. And again, I like Hit Row, but theoretically, they probably should have been squashed. But it just doesn't do well for their presentation when people are supposed to take them seriously. And I mean, this is honestly probably the second time they were squashed, because they faced, who was it? Strowman and Ricochet in the finals or the semifinals of the tag team tournament a couple of weeks ago. And they lost that match too relatively quickly. So it's probably over for Hit Row, even as heels. I don't know if they'll get canned. I don't know. I wouldn't go that far, but they need tag teams. I mean, how much does it really mean to have a team that doesn't mean anything? I understand that, but they can be a fine undercard team, I guess. It's just, I don't think they're ever going to get beyond a certain level. Let's just put it that way. The match was what it was. Speaking of squashes, we got one right after that with Lacey Evans and Carmen Harris, I believe was her name, or Harris, I think. It might have been Harris, but it was spelled Harress. Again, another complete squash. She's not on the roster as Harris. She was a local athlete. Lacey Evans made quick work of her. I don't know. Again, I didn't watch the show on TV. I'm just speaking from my perspective of being there. This crowd did not give a fuck about Lacey Evans. Someone was trying to tell me on Twitter, she got good. Listen, dude, I was in the fucking building. The Mohegan Sun Arena is not that big to where if you're on the other side of the arena, you're going to hear all this heat for Lacey Evans, but not on one side. I am telling you, dude, nobody gave a fuck about Lacey Evans. When she came out, yeah, she got some boos at the end there. I mean, they weren't completely quiet, but it was still pretty alarming for someone who has been on the main roster now for about 4 years. These people don't, speaking of alarming reactions, we'll get to that later on, these people just don't care. And honestly, I don't blame them. I've said this for weeks now. This latest version of Lacey, I mean, they're doing the right things and introducing her in vignette form and, giving her squash wins to kind of get people familiar with her again. The thing is, Lacey Evans is not that interesting. And I'm not even someone who has always disliked Lacey Evans. I mean, her, as a person, seemingly from some of the shit that she has said on social media, she only makes herself look worse by doing that in recent months. I mean, social media might be the worst thing to ever happen to this woman. But as an on-screen character, I like the sassy Southern Belle stuff. It did have a shelf life to an extent, but she's turned face and heel so many fucking times, it's not consistent. She was getting over at a certain point a few years ago. But that was a long time ago. She could have come back as a babyface last year and done well for herself, and they completely fucked that up pretty quickly. This latest heel character for her, where she's like the female version of Sergeant Slaughter, who obviously that was a gimmick that worked 40 years ago. It's not going to work for her. She's not that great in the ring. It's like, okay, the gimmick isn't that interesting, but at least she's great in the ring. Or, she's not great in the ring, but she has this great gimmick. She doesn't have either. I just can't bring myself to care about yet another repackaging for Lacey Evans. You could say the exact same thing with Baron Corbin. The report came out today from Wrestling Observer or WrestlingNews.co, whatever the website was. I think I read it on WrestlingNews.co, but I'm not sure where the original report was. I think it might have been Fightful. I'm pretty sure it was Fightful. But they had reported they've given up already on Baron Corbin's new gimmick because it wasn't working. You don't fucking say. And again, I feel they tried a little bit. The character, I'm not saying the character was good, but I mean, it was never going to work. It was basically Happy Corbin 2.0. He won several matches. He was on TV quite a bit. He was on the show almost every week. They had JBL Cup promos for him. People just don't give a fuck about Baron Corbin, specifically in this character. I like Corbin because I think he can go, and he was interesting at a few different points throughout his career. Lacey Evans has not been interesting in years. She could have been when she came back last year again as a babyface. They completely squander that, and now we're back to square one, and I still don't care. The best part of the show, the undisputed WWE Tag Team Champions, the Usos, reunited, and it feels so good, defending their SmackDown Tag Team titles against Ricochet and Braun Strowman. This was a very good match. Started out slow, and again, I'm watching it from the perspective of being there. The crowd was quiet early on, but it was probably during commercial break. This turned into a really good tag team match, and I don't give a fuck what people say. I'm not even the biggest Braun Strowman fan in the world. I wasn't overly elated when I saw they were bringing him back, but he's been an asset to this company in that he is very fucking over, and people really, really like him. I'm not saying he's the most over guy on the show, but literally every single show I have been to or have watched on TV, he gets a great reaction every time. It's not hard to book Braun Strowman. The guy does not need to be, and should not be at this point, the world champion. But using him to put over other people like the Usos, like Gunther, stuff like that is perfect. And he still wins enough to justify being over. He doesn't lose every single time whenever it matters most. Because again, I think he... Did he win the World Cup? No, that was Ricochet. But they won the tag team tournament. He beat Omos at Crown Jewel. Like, he's won a fair amount of matches. It's not like he always consistently loses. He lost here as he should have. But the story of this match was not about Braun. It was not about Ricochet. It was about the Usos. Paul Heyman asked Jimmy Uso right before this match, "Where's your brother?" And he had no fucking clue. He came out here alone. Jay did not emerge until right before the match began, right before the commercial break. We saw him emerge from the audience, got back in the ring. And I was worried too, because I'm thinking, okay, they're showing they're on the same page. They're getting along. Does this mean they might fall apart here and lose the titles? I mean, what they've been, specifically the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, not even the Raw Tag Team Champions, which they only won back in May of last year. Specifically, the SmackDown Tag Team titles they have held since July of 2021. It would have been very fucking dumb and not too early. It's been over 500 days. But in the middle of a random SmackDown show, I did not think they were losing the SmackDown tag titles. But you never know. You never know. They did plant the seed of doubt, making me think, okay, they're getting along really well here. That makes me think either Jay's walking out on Jimmy, or vice versa, or something will happen, miscommunication, further tease tension, and they lose one set of their tag team titles. Thankfully, that was not the case. That would have been very fucking dumb. This was a very good match with a fantastic finishing sequence. Ricochet hitting the shooting star press on, I don't know. I mean, it must have been Jimmy. And then Jay out of nowhere hits his diving splash, and they retain the titles. Good stuff here. And I was wondering, why the fuck when this closed the show? It was because they had to do the segments with the Usos and Paul and Sami throughout the rest of the show that were not in-ring segments. So if you had this close the show, you couldn't do what else they did on the show until next week. And the road to Elimination Chamber is very quick, and that the pay-per-view is next Saturday. So they really don't have a lot of time to do this sort of stuff, especially the end game, as it fucking should be, is Jey Uso costing Sami Zayn the title at Elimination Chamber. Now, from what I understand, since Jey, for everyone making the argument, oh, I mean, they can't appear in Canada, and it's a DUI situation, blah, 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 that very well could be the case. I mean, for Jimmy, it definitely is. The man was only arrested a couple of years ago. With Jey specifically, who the story is with, I know they did say in a segment here on SmackDown that neither one will be on the show next week, as Roman or Paul or whoever is giving them the night off. That obviously will probably apply to Elimination Chamber. I think that should be a swerve in the case of Jey, and he shows up anyway, and he costs Sami the win. That, to me, would make the most sense, even more than, I mean, Solo Sikoa could still show up and cost Sami the win, but to me, it makes more sense and would be a bigger moment if he turns on Sami after Sami told Jey on the show, I acknowledge you. But as I've said elsewhere before, I think Jey, because he was arrested in January of 2018, I mean, we're cutting it really fucking close here. I think a quick Google search told me, and I'm not saying I'm in charge of the border policy or whatever, but I think you can reapply for potential entry, I guess, into the country, into Canada, after 5 years have passed. And you've proven you can. I don't know, whatever the guidelines might be. I know there was a 5-year window from when after you've been arrested, you can reapply to enter the country. I don't know about live there, but at least go to the country. Jimmy, that certainly does not apply to. He was arrested for a DUI only less than 2 years ago. Jey, the 5-year window mark passed last month. So again, they'd be cutting it really fucking close, but it is certainly possible. So I don't know. I'm not saying they will or won't do it, but I really hope they can tell the story. Oh, they won't be there, and then they show up anyway, and or at least Jey does, and then he costs Sami the win, and then Kevin Owens comes out afterward and helps Jimmy Uso. Help Sami Zayn fend off the Bloodline. That would be incredible and make for a great moment to close out the show with. So that was that. We did have a return here from Ronda Rousey. Now, I saw the headline earlier in the day, and I got it spoiled for me because someone tweeted about it, but big SmackDown star reportedly on SmackDown tonight. I'm thinking, who could be back? Ronda Rousey is a big SmackDown star. She's one of the biggest stars, female or male, on that show. Certainly doesn't feel like it, but she's still one of the biggest names they have on SmackDown. And then when I saw people saying her name on Twitter, I'm thinking, okay, that makes sense. I don't give a fuck, but that makes sense. So the way the segment played out was this. Natalya was in the ring calling out Ronda Rousey. Not calling out Ronda. She was calling out Shayna. Because Shayna was the one who put Natalya on the shelf a couple of months ago with that injured nose, which I think was legit. I think she legitimately broke her nose. Natalya was not gone for long. She returned to the Rumble. Natalya stole the win from Shayna last week in the 4-way to qualify for the Raw Women's Championship number one contenders. The Raw Women's Championship number one contenders Elimination Chamber match. What a fucking mouthful. Next week of the pay-per-view. And that was what she said here. She said, Shayna, you put me on the shelf. You took time away from the ring from me, so I took your spot in the Elimination Chamber. And she called her a knockoff Shayna Baszler. She called Shayna a knockoff Ronda Rousey, which I saw people saying this on social media. Was it a piped-in chant? There was a fair amount of people, a decent amount of people chanting that toward Shayna, so that was not piped in. Some of the other heat or cheers for certain people might have been piped in. For Natalya, no one really cared when she came out, or Lacey, or Madcap, or Carrie, half of the show had people that just did not get a great reaction at all. But anyway, so Shayna comes out and she says, I'm not a knockoff Ronda, and I was fighting before Ronda. People forget about my accolades, blah, 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 blah. So they're telling the story, or they were telling the story, or at least teasing that, Shayna and Ronda could be teasing tension. Out comes Ronda Rousey for the first time since losing the SmackDown Women's Championship on the final SmackDown of 2022. So she's been gone for, let's say, 6 weeks. She's been gone for 6 weeks from WWE TV. She came out to an alarmingly quiet reaction. Now, I did have someone on Twitter, Raphael, shout out to him, questioning my wording of alarming, because he had said she hasn't felt like a big star in about a year, which I agree with. Ronda Rousey has not really felt like a big deal. Probably, she did the night she came back. She got a great reaction the night she came back in the Rumble. She felt like a big deal that night. Most people probably did not want her to win that Rumble, which I understand, but, she felt like a big deal. Every passing week, Ronda has felt like less of a bigger deal than she was the week before. We are now over a year into her return run in WWE, and she is literally just another woman on the roster. And I say alarmingly because, again, I'm coming from the perspective of someone who has been at several WWE shows for a few months now. I was at WrestleMania when she challenged Charlotte the first time for the championship and lost. I was at WrestleMania Backlash when she won the championship. She got a great reaction there. Again, I didn't care about her as a character at that point. Didn't even really care to see her as champion, although it just made sense to have her take the title from Charlotte. She still got a pretty good reaction on that show. I have been to several SmackDown shows. I've been to several pay-per-views. She gets less and less of a reaction every fucking time I go. And it's not a case of, Connecticut, the crowd sucks. There's just a lot of people on the show that just aren't over, and it's not the crowd's fault or any other city's fault. It's because of the storyline and what they do with these people and how they book them. Again, for a woman that's been gone for over a month, which isn't that long, I understand that, but you would think she would have gotten a much bigger reaction than she did. I mean, it was surprisingly, shockingly, alarmingly tame. I'm not even saying, this is bad news for Ronda. It is bad news for Ronda, but I'm not, disappointed by the reaction. I really don't give a fuck at this point about Ronda Rousey. Her run has been so watered down. Her character's been so watered down. Face, heel, tweener, doesn't matter. The promos are awful. She has not had many good matches since coming back. Her booking's been very questionable. Under Vince, under Triple H, doesn't matter. Putting her in the tag team division is probably the best thing for her at this point. Better than going back after the main title and facing Charlotte for the upteenth time. It's hard for me to care. It really is. So she and Shayna teased tension and then they attacked Natalya. Shotzi came out. They attacked Shotzi. Shotzi also has beef with Ronda and Shayna because Shotzi was put on the shelf and I don't know if she had a legit injury, but they attacked her in the parking lot. After Ronda beat Shotzi at Survivor Series back in November, I think they attacked her and sidelined her soon after on SmackDown. We haven't seen... Shotzi also came back in the Rumble, and again, got little to no reaction when she came out. You got little to no reaction when she came out here. People just don't care. And again, I'm a fan of a lot of these women. I think Ronda is talented. I think Shayna is great. I like Shotzi. Natalya is Natalya at this point. Most people don't give a fuck, and the whole segment here made sense because they're doing Ronda and Shayna versus Natalya and Shotzi next week on the show. And again, it makes sense. I like the team of Ronda and Shayna. They put Natalya on the shelf. They put Shotzi on the shelf. The storyline is logical, but no one fucking cares. Speaking of another match on the show people didn't care about, and again, they did a good job of attempting to get the crowd into it. Liv Morgan, Raquel versus Chelsea Green and Sonya. Now again, to kind of address everyone in the match, Liv was easily, obviously, the most over person in this match. But even she did not get a great reaction upon coming out. I mean, it was later in the show, not overly surprising. I like Liv. Her booking's been all over the place in the last year, but she was easily the most popular woman in this match. Raquel, very tame reaction. No one really cared. She got a great reaction to the Rumble in San Antonio because she's from Texas. And even that surprised me because, again, even because they were in her home state, I'm not sure enough people would care about her to react, but they did. But it was back to the usual reaction for Raquel here, because again, I like Raquel. She's not interesting at all as a babyface. I know this is who she is in reality, and she's always smiling and happy and positive. That's great. It does not make for a very interesting, in her case anyway, a very interesting pro wrestling character. She is as fucking boring as watching, as bread. As month-old bread. Stale as month-old, whatever the fucking expression is. She's as boring as watching paint dry as Raquel Rodriguez. Sonya Deville, she is just, her booking, even the in-ring match, I don't know. She is so far regressed from how good she was on SmackDown 3 years ago. I'm not even really sure what to say about Sonya at this point. Honestly, pairing her with Chelsea in the tag team might not be the worst thing. This division is in shambles. They never really had a women's tag team division to begin with, maybe 3 years ago, but not since then. The division is completely non-existent. They work well together, though, as like the Karen pairing. That can be entertaining. But Sonya on her own, no one gives a shit. I mean, I don't think she has won a meaningful match on this show in probably 2 years. Her matches aren't great. The match with Charlotte a week or two ago, I think it was last week, was decent. But she hasn't really had any standout matches since the matches with Mandy Rose a couple of years ago. Just no one cares. Chelsea Green, I will say this. For someone I really had no interest in WWE bringing back a couple of months ago, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm the biggest Chelsea Green fan of all time. I understand why they would bring her back. She's got a good look. She's honestly made for WWE. She looks like someone that would be a WWE superstar. Remember, Chelsea and Sonya were on Tough Enough together back in 2015. The fact they didn't acknowledge that here was funny. I didn't even really think about that until I saw someone tweet about it. But with Chelsea Green, though, again, to me, like with Lacey, it's almost like she's good in the ring. She's pretty good. She had a good run in Ring of Honor and Impact and NWA while she was gone from WWE. She did a good job of keeping herself busy and staying relevant and whatnot. To me, she's just never been exceptional in the ring to the point where it's like, oh my God, I need to see her have a match with whoever. She's had some very good matches, but anything like overly spectacular, specifically in WWE. But you can also argue she was never given the opportunity. To me, she excels better with the character stuff. I hated the hot mess shit personally. I just was not a fan of it at all. I think this Karen gimmick, for as hesitant as they was when they first read that report from Fightful a couple of weeks ago, right before the Rumble, I think it honestly really works well for her. She's good enough in the ring where this, her in-ring abilities combined with this character, I think can work. I think it was Sean Ross Sapp tweet that she tapped out after getting pinned, which I didn't see that when I was there, but I thought that was funny when I read that. I think this really works for her, honestly. I mean, I think this can get over, and she got more gradually over during the match, getting heat from the audience. She can't lose every fucking match, but for now, I think it's working. I actually like this. The match was fine. It was very forgettable, but what stood out to me was Chelsea Green's character work and how this gimmick could have some legs. Maybe not long-term, but I thought it was an effective way of bringing her back as opposed to just like, oh, Chelsea Green's back and let's push her. Like, no one will care. I think this is a better way of going about it, honestly. It goes to show that not everyone has to win every fucking match they're in to get over. All it takes sometimes is a good character, and I think she has that, honestly. So the main event, and yes, this was the main event, a number one contenders match, fatal four-way match, to determine the number one contender to the Intercontinental Championship. I think next week on SmackDown. I read next week. I saw some people say Elimination Chamber. I don't even know if they said here Elimination Chamber or next week. I don't know. A quick search of WWE.com could probably tell you, but I don't care enough because I don't really care about the match. Gunther next week, or whenever it might be, defending against Madcap Moss. That is who won this four-way. It was Madcap Moss, Rey Mysterio, Karrion Kross, Santos Escobar. It was a quality contest. I thought all four guys worked well together. There wasn't an obvious outcome. I mean, Rey was the most popular by far. Karrion, Santos, I don't care about Madcap. I like Karrion and Santos. They came out to crickets. As did Madcap. When he won, no one gave a shit. People were kind of like, oh, interesting. Him pinning the most, him pinning the most popular performer in the match was weird. Him winning is supposed to be like a positive move, but you're not going to hopefully have him pin Karrion. And I mean, Santos has been protected, but not that much. I'm kind of surprised he didn't get pinned. I'm not complaining. I just thought it was interesting. So Madcap winning, I really just don't care. I really don't. People are saying, oh, he's a filler challenger for Gunther. Yeah, but so is everyone else that Gunther has faced so far, and all of those challengers were interesting. Even Braun Strowman. The Braun Strowman-Gunther match I thought was very good. You had Gunther against Rey Mysterio the first time, a couple of months ago, very good match. Him and Ricochet was a great match. Him and Sheamus obviously was amazing. So I've cared about every challenger that Gunther has had so far. I don't give a fuck about Madcap Moss in the title picture. And anyone saying, oh, you can't do heel versus heel, who the fuck says not? I mean, maybe the crowd wouldn't give a shit. I know Sheamus was a heel when he became number one contender back in the fall. And that was different because they knew he would probably get cheered in the UK. I think they could have added this match to Elimination Chamber, have it be Santos or Karrion, have him go out there and have a kick-ass match. The crowd would absolutely in Montreal get behind one of these guys. The Madcap Moss match should be no more than 5 minutes. I mean, the man has not won a single fucking match in what feels like 6 months. He broke away from Baron Corbin. He beat him multiple times, including at WrestleMania Backlash. And I don't think did they have another match at Hell in a Cell? I don't even remember. And I just don't care. That was almost a year ago. I just don't give a shit about the guy. I like Emma a lot. Emma's far more interesting, and I like Emma way more than Madcap Moss. I don't know, man. This is just, was just like, why? This was honestly the worst. I tweeted this. This was the worst outcome. Rey Mysterio, I knew wasn't winning. I knew Dominic was on the show backstage because he actually wrestled in the dark match. The pre-show dark match was Butch beating Giovanni Vinci quickly, but the dark matches after the show were, I mentioned Bray Wyatt beating LA Knight in an ODQ match. That was the second one. The first one after the show was New Day beating Judgment Day. So Dominic was there. Angie was there as well, Ray's wife. I have no fucking clue if they weren't going to use her for an angle. I have no idea why Angie was there in Connecticut, of all places. Maybe she wanted to hit the slots, I don't know, with Ray after the show. Dominic, shockingly, did not interact with his mom at all, which I thought was very weird. I don't know if even Ray acknowledged her. Maybe he did. I don't know. But, yeah, so Ray lost. We knew that was going to be the case. I would have given the win to Karrion or Santos. I love the interaction between Santos and Ray. During this match, they got a good reaction for finally facing off. Not great, but good. They did do a clip after the show of Ray and Santos showing respect for each other, which I thought was cool. I haven't watched the full thing yet. I don't know, man. I would have probably just had Karrion or Santos. When Karrion just lost to Rey Mysterio a couple of weeks ago, the guy needs to get his heat back. I mean, whatever heat he had to begin with, which wasn't a lot. He needs some rebound win, and I think this could have been it. Yeah, he would have lost the Gunther at Elimination Chamber. Maybe the match would have been boring as fuck. But I honestly care way more about that than Madcap Moss and Gunther. Maybe the match is great, and maybe they surprise me. I'm not saying Moss is even bad in the ring. But Madcap, change the guy's fucking name for starters. Second of all, he's not going to win, and I don't find him interesting enough to really get interested in the match. But that's just me. And then they closed the show with Paul Heyman confronting Jimmy, kind of just saying, hey, you guys are off the show next week, per Roman's orders, whatever. And, just keep an eye on your brother if he's in or out of the bloodline, whatever. So, interesting development there. That was really the main event of the show. This was, the four-way was just the precursor. But that was SmackDown for February 10th, 2023. So, I think they're doing the Intercontinental Championship match next week. I think that's what was said. I wasn't listening to the commentary, so I don't know. I know they are doing Ronda and Shayna next week against Shotzi and Natalya. I know that. There was another match they advertised. Was it? Oh, it was. I'm sorry, Drew and who the fuck is it? Drew and Sheamus. Obviously, Drew and Sheamus. His name escaped me for a moment. Against the Viking Raiders, because the Viking Raiders had a video that interrupted Drew and Sheamus' winning celebration following their match on the show. So. That's on tap for next week. I may or may not be there. I'm not 100% sure. Yes, it's in Montreal. Yes, that means what you probably think it means. The whole weekend is, yes, I will be there for all the shows. Not for the Undertaker show, but SmackDown, Chamber, very likely. I will be at Chamber. I know that for a fact. So it's going to be another long weekend. No SmackDown audio review next week, though, because not only will I be there, but it's a pay-per-view weekend, and you guys know what that means. I very rarely do fucking SmackDown reviews on pay-per-view weekend. So no audio review of SmackDown next week. The SmackDown Lowdown review, if they do an episode, which I'm sure they will, that review will not be up until Monday or Tuesday. I'll be traveling on Sunday. I won't be able to do it on Saturday. So it'll probably be up at some point, either Monday or Tuesday, so keep an eye out for that. Have a great one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into my review. I appreciate it. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.